Welcome back in, everybody. This is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. We're powered today by Corona Light, and we're coming to you live from John and Molly's in East Hampton Township in New Jersey. It's a post-mortem Mets Thursday show. Mets lose last night. A terrific, legendary pitching matchup between Noah Syndergaard and Madison Bumgarner. My next guest, Richard Justice from MLB.com, said, "You hate to see one of these teams lose," when we were texting last night. And as a Met fan, I absolutely hate seeing my Metsies go down in the postseason. And Richard Justice joins us right now. Richard, appreciate a few minutes today, and how are you?
I'm doing good. And, if you look at the big picture of the Mets, it was what they did was beyond belief. I mean, if they go to the World Series, it's the kind of thing you make movies about, you write books about. I mean, if you tell them on the first day of spring training, okay, this, and this, and this, you're going to lose your team. You're going to lose 3 starters and Wright and Walker. And this is what's going to happen. Robert Gesselman's going to be big. Seth Lugo, you wouldn't believe it. So I was sorry to see him go for that from that point of view. But they had one hell of a great year.
No question about that. I absolutely agree with that. You got to give a lot of credit to Terry Collins, especially where this team was in August. And this is a group that, no question, they were decimated by injury. And yes, the San Francisco Giants have a better chance to take down the Cubs than my New York Mets. But let's start off with the negative before we talk about the positive. That's Jeurys Familia. Last year, lights out in the first 2 rounds of the postseason, but then in the World Series, he was horrendous. Yesterday, horrendous as well. What has happened to Jeurys Familia in the postseason since that Cubs sweep in the NLCS last year?
Well, wasn't he good in the regular season this year?
Yes, he was.
Okay, I mean, so you got to be careful with those small sample sizes in the playoffs and trying to connect dots A and B. David Price and Clayton Kershaw have struggled in the postseason. But if you're asking me, is there anybody you'd rather have pitching a postseason game than Clayton Kershaw? Well, anybody not named Madison Bumgarner, I would still take him. I think it happens. Why it happens, I don't know. But it's unfortunate.
How about the walk to panic last night? Because that completely changed the Mets' approach in the 9th inning. It's bottom of the order. That walk, it's unexcusable. I know it happens, but that's a bad job last night, walking to panic. Because if you don't walk panic there, you get him out. You don't have the big home run by Connor, and then you intentionally walk him, and then you put the Giants in a tough situation with Madison Bumgarner coming up to the plate.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Familia didn't have a good night. And Paco Panic did a good job working for the walk, and he wasn't over-anxious. And then Connor Gillespie, sometimes the baseball gods just say, it's your night, buddy, and that was his night.
Gillespie is someone that I'm going to refer to like So Taguchi as a Mets fan history when the Mets were in that 2006 NLCS. We talk about the panic walk. One more negative before we get to the positive, and there's nothing the Mets could do about it, but Asdrubal Cabrera up at the plate, he gives the ball a nice ride up the middle, should have been enough to score a run, but that catch last night by Madison Bumgarner, I watched it 1,000 times today, Richard. It was brilliant last night. What a catch.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about one of the great players in the game and one of the great October performers, and, Bruce Bochy had a very simple philosophy last night. He was going to go with his best, and his best is Madison Bumgarner, and his best is Johnny Cueto. You saw Cueto stirring in the bullpen. So if they were going to go down, they were going to go down firing their best shots.
Bumgarner, brilliant on the big stage. We know that 3 World Series rings already. Could win another one this year. It is an even year. The Giants like to go on runs in these even years. In my lifetime, and I'm a little bit younger than you, the best postseason pitcher I've seen was Curt Schilling. Big game. Who do you take, Madison Bumgarner or Curt Schilling?
Well, I don't have to make that call. Maybe Bob Gibson over any of those guys. But, yeah, and, the thing about being an ace is it's more than just stuff. It's that you're willing to be the guy to take the responsibility for resting the bullpen, stopping a losing streak, all of that stuff. And Madison Bumgarner is just that guy. He's a real simple guy. Whatever you need me to do, I will do to win. In every way you can define ace, you can define ace. And you have to, the Mets, the Giants, there's a corollary between the Giants and the San Antonio Spurs, if you ask me, in that Bochy and Popovich Posey and Duncan, and I don't know who Bumgarner, who would be, one of the triplets, I guess, one of the other triplets. But that you're getting something special going on there, and it's a team that, from ownership down through management, down through the locker room, which is run by Posey. And be clear about that. They're a model for every other.
Very good point. Richard Justice joins us, MLB.com, in Texas today for that big series coming up in the American League Divisional Series. Let's get to Noah Syndergaard. What a performance last night. So brilliant.
Yeah, he's from I'm in Arlington, Texas today, and he's from a few miles from here, and it was dominant. What they hoped to get from him, they got. And, they had the game where they wanted it to be. It's just that on this day, the other team was better.
Well, as we take a look to next year, the big thing that every Mets fan is going to be panicking about in the offseason, just like last year, will Yoenis Cespedes be back with the team? First off, do you believe that he'll opt out? And is there a chance, what do you put the percentages at if he does opt out, that the Mets are going to bring him back?
The contract's pretty good. 2 years at $55 million. Now, he may be thinking, I want a deal to give me more years, that I would like more years, because when this contract's up, he'll be, 32, 33 when this contract's up. And so he may look at this as, this is my chance for some long-term security. If I had a guess, and this is just a guess, he will opt out and survey the market. But the contract's good. I mean, 2 years at $55 million, that's pretty good. And he was hurt some. He wasn't great down the stretch. So there's a lot of different ways to look at that. And, I would like to know what are the Mets thinking? Are the Mets definitely wanting back for that $27.5 million, or how would they feel about it?
I believe it's essential. If they don't have him, that completely changes the entire complexion of the lineup. The one thing I wonder, though, with Cespedes, and he's an interesting person, someone that has bounced around from so many teams since his Oakland Athletics days, then to the Red Sox and the Tigers, and now with the Mets. He seems like he has a lot of good camaraderie with these Mets teammates. I wonder if he takes a little bit less, because we know the Mets are a frugal organization, and maybe he does stick around and stay with the Mets because of that team camaraderie that he's feeling in New York.
Well, I think he's comfortable there, but, he's played on 3 teams now, and I think he understands the dynamic. He was in a very good locker room situation in Oakland. Those guys revered him. And so I think you've got to look at this as a business aspect. And it comes down to this. The number is $55 million. Can I get more than that? And with an average annual salary, it won't be that. I mean, 27.5, I think he was one of the top 8 in terms of position players. He might have been the highest paid position player in the game, and not counting A-Rod. And so he's got a lot of things to look at. But if I had to guess, I would guess he would opt out. But, teams are being more cautious in the way they're spending money. Teams now have understood that it's not just about spending the most money. So I know there'd be other places like Atlanta. He'd be a great fit there, and they have lots of money to spend. But so we'll see. I understand it does change the Mets, but as long as if they have Mets and Harvey and who am I missing? Mets, Harvey, and
DeGrom.
The other end. Oh yeah, DeGrom. if they have those 3 back, they're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how those guys come back from injuries. If I'm Terry Collins, yes, you have to monitor their workload. But let's get to that bullpen, because that was the problem last night with Familia. I like Addison Reed. I'm not someone that's going to be crazy today and say, hey, get rid of Jerry's Familia. I'm sure there's a Met fan like that does exist somewhere out there. How does this team, though, improve this bullpen minus Reed and Familia? Because they do need to improve the depth in that bullpen.
Well, I liked it down the stretch when didn't they have Salas as kind of set up as the 7th inning guy? I thought it worked well. He had defined the roles, and players are comfortable with that. And Addison Reed to me was the key in that he really kind of remade himself as a major league pitcher. So you want other arms? You do want other arms, but you just want to stack up those arms. You got to make sure. When you start this thing next, you got to make sure first you got the rotation taken care of, and then the Cespedes. It's amazing for a good year they have a ton of issues that came up, when and where and what with David Wright. Neil Walker, I assume, will be back okay. So it's got a chance to be a really good team, and the injuries gave them some depth they probably didn't know they had.
Also, we talk about depth or lack of depth, but with depth on this team, I see a lot of depth in the outfield. I would assume they bring Jay Bruce back. You also have Granderson, who was sensational last night in center field, and you also have Michael Conforto. So I know we're going to wait for the big domino to fall in Yoenis Cespedes, but how about the other outfielders for the New York Mets next year?
Yeah, and Conforto is the guy that you look at, like, what's the progress going to be? When can you play him? How much can you play him? He's got to advance. You got to be patient with young guys. Terry knows that. And just see how it evolves. You're looking for that. But, you can't – there's only so much you can do. You can go get a bullpen arm. You can try to sign Cespedes. And but there's – in terms of – there's just not much out there in terms of free agent starting pitching, Jeremy Hellickson's going to get an amazing amount of money because he's the best guy out there. But, otherwise it's Brett Anderson, it's Doug Fister's guys. You're taking it's a big risk. Mets are in a good spot. The one thing we saw is that their player development system's in a good place. And so they've got a chance to be competitive. And when you look in the landscape of that division, Atlanta, Philadelphia, they're going to be in a position to compete, I would think.
Where will Terry Collins fall for the manager of the year? Where will he be? Do you think he could win it?
I would vote for him today. When you consider everything he went through to get to this point, I mean, it would be pretty easy for me to vote for him because the Cubs didn't have the bumps that they had. The Nationals had some injuries at the end, but not for most of the year. The other guy would be Dave Roberts, who did an amazing job in his first year with the Dodgers.
Richard Justice with us from MLB.com. So you're at the Rangers and Blue Jays series. We all know this is going to have a lot of drama in this series. This looks like it's going to be a fun series, Richard.
Yeah, it is. And these are two teams, Kevin Pillar said it best yesterday. He goes, hey, we just don't like each other. But I think what the leadership in both clubhouses, Beltray in one clubhouse and Donaldson and others in the other clubhouse have said, we got something more important than settling scores. There's a time to settle scores. This is not it.
So the way that the Blue Jays got here, they had the big Edwin Encarnacion home run, but a lot of controversy to come from that game was Buck Showalter not going to Zach Britton. I thought that was an awful decision. Where do you fall in the Zach Britton debate?
Well, one guy used his closer last night, 2 nights before. The other guy didn't use his closer, and it blew up in his face. What we're talking about, a percentage is 23%, 28%, 78%, 81%. You play those, and the only reason we're talking second guess is it didn't work. Should Buck have used Britton? In retrospect, no question about it. And Zach Britton sort of threw his guy under the bus after the game. I understand you commit to using him 1 inning, you're committing to using him 2 innings, and you're saving him as long as you can, but I think obviously it didn't work out.
Britton was someone in July, I think it was July 31st, where he went 2 innings in Toronto out of the pen and didn't allow a hit. We all know his numbers this year, a ridiculous .54 ERA. Do you just believe that maybe Buck was just over-managing a little bit? Because conventional wisdom to me, he's your best pitcher. Put him in the game.
Yeah, and I think maybe he did overthink it some. But I've talked to a dozen people, and they all have a different theory on it. My first thought was that he's covering for Zach, that he's a medical problem developed. But clearly after the game, Zach said he was good to go. At least that's what he said. He was good to go. So it was the decision that Buck is going to have to live with for a long time. He's methodically building a Hall of Fame resume, but a lot of people are going to remember that one.
All right, Richard, before we let you run, who's playing in the NLCS, who's playing in the ALCS? Who do you like to win these divisional rounds?
I think the Red Sox right now are the best team in the American League. I think the Red Sox and Blue Jays will play in one round, and I think we're probably going to get the Cubs in coin flip, probably maybe the Dodgers in the other.
What separates the Blue Jays from the Rangers to you in this one?
There's a little more depth in the rotation, and I don't know that matters in a best-of-5 series, but I think overall they just feel a little bit better about their pitching. The Texas pitching is Hamels and Darvish, and we'll figure it out from there.
All right, Richard, appreciate the time. Enjoy the game today. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks.